So we're about to hear about two amazing miracles that Jesus performed. Luke 8:22-39. Jesus calms the storm. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down for a nap. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water, and they were in real danger. The disciples went and woke him, shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. Suddenly the storm stopped and all was calm. Then he asked them, "Where is your faith?" The disciples were terrified and amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "When he gives a command, even the wind and waves obey him." Jesus heals a demon-possessed man. So they arrived in the region of the Gerasenes, across the lake from Galilee. As Jesus was climbing out of the boat, a man who was possessed by demons came out to meet him. For a long time he had been homeless and naked, living in the tombs outside the town. As soon as he saw Jesus, he shrieked and fell down in front of him. Then he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Please, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already commanded the evil spirit to come out of him. This spirit had often taken control of the man. Even when he was placed under the guard and put in chains and shackles, he simply broke them and rushed out into the wilderness, completely under the demon's power. Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, for he was filled with many demons. The demons kept begging Jesus not to send them into the bottomless pit. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby, and the demons begged him to let them enter into the pigs. So Jesus gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned. When the herdsmen saw it, they fled to the nearby town and surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw a man who had been freed from the demons. He was sitting at Jesus' feet, fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others how the demon-possessed man had been healed, and all the people in the region of the Gerasenes begged Jesus to go away and leave them alone, for a great wave of fear swept over them. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. The man who had been freed from the demons begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him home, saying, "No, go back to your family and tell them everything God has done for you." So he went through all the town, proclaiming the great things Jesus had done for him.
Thanks, Rob and Ann. Thanks, Pip, for that prayer, for giving us those words. Let's pray. And Jesus, you have the words of life. Where else can we go? So we come to you and we ask that you'll open our ears so that we can hear and our eyes so that we can see your power this morning to free us from all fear. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to talk this morning about fear. We're going to look in this passage at where we see fear. What fear have you made peace with in your life? What fear have you made peace with? Sort of our guiding question for this morning. I'll always be like this, a fear that my kids something will happen to them. I fear that there won't be enough, that you'll be forgotten. Fear can become just a guiding force so present we don't even notice it anymore. What fears have you made peace with? One day Jesus said to the disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." This is out of nowhere. It's not prompted by anything in the text. Jesus just says to his disciples, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." The Sea of Galilee wasn't large, but it was large enough that you didn't cross it unless you had reason to. And on the other side of the lake was this country called the Gerasenes. It's a Gentile area. There's no particular place to go. There's no major city. There's no particular reason you would want to go there. But Jesus says, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they got into the boat and they start out and they sail across, and Jesus settled down for a nap. Isn't that nice? Jesus is a napper. Jesus is a napper. He loved a good nap, didn't mind, found a cozy spot in the front of the boat, settled down, and soon fell asleep. Maybe he's a snorer too. The text doesn't say. But soon, a fierce storm came down on the lake. Storm's a bit misleading. Storm gives me the sense of thunder and lightning and rain, which would be like, okay, that would wake you up. The Sea of Galilee is below sea level, and it often happened that wind would come through the valley and sweep down onto the Sea of Galilee, and it could be quite gusty and windy on the Sea of Galilee out of nowhere, which of course would cause the waves to swell and things to slosh around, and the boat could perhaps take on water. Now the disciples, this isn't their first rodeo. They grew up in a boat. They're fishermen. They know what they're doing on the water. So it must have been pretty bad on this occasion that they're frantic and worried, and maybe something happens with the boat because it starts taking on water, and there is real fear, and they're afraid that the boat's going to go down, and maybe they're going to have to try to swim to shore or just float on whatever's left of the boat, that it maybe is going to capsize. They are in real danger, the text tells us. And so the disciples went and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." They certainly don't expect him to wake up and calm the waves. I was thinking about, like, all right, Harborside staff's on a boat cruise, and Dave says, "Hey, we're gonna go across the water over there." So, all right, that's fine. And pretty soon, soon enough, Dave's curled up in the front of the boat, falling asleep, taking a nap. The rest of us are there. Things start to get a little rocky. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. What are we going to do? And Mike has brought his computer, and he's trying to figure out how to get a good cell signal so that we can call for help. Leslie somehow has managed to get a good cell signal and is on the phone with a tradie, figuring out when the tradie can come and fix the boat the next week, scheduling it, setting it up for us. Rita happens to have brought a lasagna with her, and she figures, hey, if we're going down, we might as well have full stomachs. And I'm trying to figure out, is this like an Australia thing? Like Dave's still sleeping? Is this just what we do? Are we okay, or are we going to die here? Well, eventually we're going to say, "Dave, wake up. Come on, man. Help us out. We're pitching the water out." This is the least flattering comparison to Jesus that you'll ever get. What are you doing? We're going to die. Will you wake up and at least, help us out as we're drowning here? The disciples certainly don't think, all right, fine, let's wake Jesus up. He'll calm the waters. They're terrified. They don't know why they're on this trip. They don't know why they're going across the sea. They don't know why they set out in a boat right before a storm was about to hit. But hey, at least wake up, because this is kind of on you, man. So Jesus wakes up, and he rebukes the waves and the wind. He says something to the effect of, "Be still, quiet." And I have to imagine there's a split second where they've just woken Jesus up from his nap. He turns around and says, "Quiet." They have to think, and at least, is he yelling at us? Did he just want to keep napping? Who is he talking to? Their first response isn't, "Oh, I'm sure he's speaking to the atmosphere." He yells, "Quiet, be still. I'm trying to catch some Z's over here." They think that for a moment, perhaps, until the wind and the waves obey. What a moment. Until they realize that Jesus is actually speaking to the sky, and they are standing in a boat, tunic and cloak drenched, with a man who can command the atmosphere. And Jesus looks at his disciples and asks, "Where is your faith?" They were drowning before, terrified, understandably, fearful of the wind and the waves and death. And now Luke tells us, actually for the first time, standing next to Jesus, they are terrified and amazed because they're standing in the boat with the man who just told their fears to be quiet. Then they ask a question that we've heard before in Luke, and it's maybe the only question that really matters. Pay attention to the fear in the text and pay attention to the questions that are asked. They're good questions. Jesus asks them, "Where is your faith?" And then the disciples ask each other, "Who is this man?" Who is this man? It's funny hearing it from the disciples, who we associate with being the most intimate companions of Jesus. Of course, they know Jesus. They're the ones that know Jesus best. But they don't know this yet. They're still learning who Jesus is. Who is this that can command the wind and the waves? Who is this that controls everything we were just afraid of? What fear have you made peace with? A moment ago, the disciples are scared of the wind and the waves and the water, but all of a sudden they are filled with a new kind of fear because the man that they are in the boat with just told the root of their fears to be quiet. They're amazed and terrified, but it's the sort of fear that makes all other fears dissolve. It's sort of like the superpower that a mother has when she can come alongside her child, no matter what they're scared of in the night, and her presence simply makes that fear dissolve, even if the mother knows, I don't have the answer for you. But her presence just makes the fear dissolve. They stand in the presence of Jesus, and his presence makes the fears that we've made peace with seem so small and so silly. Because here's a man who just told the wind and the waves to be quiet, and they listened to him. Where is your faith? Who is this? Well, things are about to get real when the boat finally hits land on the other side. They've gone through this storm to end up on the other side. Now what's going to happen? What are we here for? They arrive in a region that's called the Gerasenes. Different manuscripts call it different things. Doesn't matter. It's an area they don't usually travel to. They haven't been there yet. I don't think they're going to come back in the Gospels to this area. It's an odd sort of trip to make. It's a Gentile area. The boat makes it to land, and immediately, Luke says, once Jesus' feet hit the sand, a man approached him. Who is this man? His hair is matted. He smells terrible. He is gaunt, skinny from not taking care of his body at all. He is barely alive. He has marks on his body, on his hands from where the chains are used to try and subdue him that he has broken. In Mark's gospel, we're told that this man inflicts wounds upon himself. He beats himself and has bruises all over his body. He's naked. He has no home. He lives among the dead outside the town, and demons are possessing him. He is the type of man that has that look in his eyes that you want nothing to do with. It's unpredictable and frightening and terrifying. I was going to church one morning in Chicago, and we lived downtown, and our church was on the north side of the city, and I would take the red line in the morning. And Sunday mornings is very quiet. I would get to church early, so very few people out and about. And one morning, you had to go down under the ground to get on the train at the stop where we lived. And so I went down, a few people around, but not too many. And as I was going to board the train, this man with, that kind of appearance, that kind of look in his eye, walked right up to me. And, I I was kind of new to the city, but I'm trying to be that cool city guy that isn't like fazed by anything. It's like, oh, hashtag Chicago, right? And trying to play it off, and then he just screamed at me some profanity, and I like backed away and like stepped out of his way, like gave him space, and he walked by, and I remember like trying to, keep myself composed, making sure I hadn't like wet myself, and getting onto the train and just feeling so rattled by it, right, all day. I mean, even when I think about it to this day, it's not a good memory. This is the kind of man that approaches Jesus here as soon as his feet hit the ground, unpredictable. Luke gives us so much detail, as if to say, this is as far gone as you get. This is as lost as you can become. His humanity is just hanging on by a thread. We're going to get stories about tax collectors and Samaritans and Pharisees and the paralyzed and lame, and all of those people are on the margins of their society. But this man's gone. He might as well be dead. He's a Gentile, of course. He's possessed by evil spirits. He's deranged. He's naked. He's unclean. He's unsafe. He's barely human. And he is why Jesus has taken a boat through a storm to a country he'll never come to again. Because he leaves the 99 to find the one, even this one. He's the whole reason. Because at the end of this, he's going to be told to get out. And he's going to get back in his boat, and he's going to go back. And you know what? The trip's going to have been worth it for him. Because he came for the one, for this man whose humanity was barely there. Wow. Time and again, Jesus shows us who God is. So full of mercy, so full of compassion. Seeing the humanity and divinity in every single human being, never giving up on anyone. Man. If it is the role of demons to dehumanize people, to distort the image of God in them, if that's the work of evil, and I think that's a good description of what we see evil spirits, the demonic, doing in Scripture. They can't create anything, but they can take what was intended for good and they can make it evil. They can take what should be life and bring it towards death. They bring death and destruction and distortion everywhere. And that's what they've done. And this man was as far gone as you could get. He belonged to the forces occupying his body. And it must have been the shock of all shocks for him when Jesus' feet hit the sand. And as soon as he saw Jesus, he shrieked and fell down in front of him and screamed, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Another great question from this passage. What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? The demons know who Jesus is. If you want good theology in the New Testament, look at the ways that the demons respond to Jesus. They're always steps ahead of where the disciples or other characters are in the story. They know exactly who Jesus is even before the disciples know who Jesus is. In the previous story, the disciples ask, "Who is this who commands the wind and the waves?" And it's an unlikely place where we get our answer. The demons. They know exactly who Jesus is, and they name him Jesus, Son of the Most High God. What business do you have with us? Jesus might have responded, "You have one of mine, and I'm going to take him back." But Jesus demanded of them, "What is your name?" There's another question. For the disciples, he asks, "Where is your faith?" And to this man, he asks, "What is your name?" Is he asking the man, or is he speaking to the spirits? I think he's speaking to the man as much as possible, maybe even trying to pull out whatever humanity is left in him. That's why he's come. But the evil spirits respond. It's a spine-tingling response. What is your name? Legion. For we are many. Legion comes from a Latin phrase. It's a military, it's a unit of troops. It's 4,000 to 6,000 troops in the Roman army. What is your name? Legion. And then there's this whole back and forth between Jesus and the spirits. This back and forth about the pigs and wanting to be sent into the pigs and not into the abyss. And so Jesus grants them that request, and the spirits are sent into the pigs, and then something causes the pigs to run into the water. Is it the demons wreaking havoc and bringing death even upon pigs? Or are the pigs spooked and then they just go into the water? Or maybe is it Jesus that prompts the pigs to go into the water, and once they're in the water, do the pigs die and do the demons die? Or do the demons go to the abyss? Or are the demons set free? There's lots of questions that sort of pop up as you read a passage like this. And you can find people that are sure they know what it means. I'm not one of those people that claims to know exactly how all of this works. The cosmology around the demonic in Luke's gospel is confusing and not straightforward. And there's things we can know, and there's a lot that we don't know. And I think it can be a bit distracting. There's really interesting tangents to go down about, what happens, are there 4,000 to 6,000 demons? Is that what this means? And what happens to these demons? And it can be a bit, it's interesting, but it can also be a bit distracting from the purpose of the text. I was thinking about, in Lord of the Rings, in the books and the movies, the story of Frodo trying to get the ring to Mount Doom, and one of the classic fan questions that you can find Reddit boards discussing, and you can is why didn't the Eagles just take the ring to Mount Doom? Couldn't the Eagles have just, there's these good eagles in the story, and they could have just picked up the ring and brought it to Mount Doom and dropped it in. Why don't they do that? And if you read the entire book and then watch the movies with that question, you'll miss the entire plot and all of the characters and everything that's happening. And you can ask Sarah afterwards why the Eagles couldn't have brought the ring to Mount Doom, if you really want that question. My point being is there's a lot of mystery in this passage. There's probably some metaphor in this passage. There's something about pigs and Gentiles happening here. And there's a lot that's interesting, but ultimately can also be distracting for the purposes of our story. For the purposes of this text, what we see is Jesus exercising power over the spiritual dominion of evil, his authority over the demonic. What we know is that there was a man clinging to the very slimmest margin of his self. And Jesus exercises authority and power over the demons who claim this man, and he restores him so that he can be himself. He breathes deeply for the first time in a long time. He remembers his own name, the name his mother gave him. He experiences freedom from the fears that he had lived with. And a crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been freed from the demons. He was sitting at Jesus' feet, fully clothed, perfectly sane. Contrast this description with what we saw in the beginning now. He was as far away from being human as possible, and now he is exactly in the place where you are the fullest human being, sitting at the feet of Jesus. That is where you are most yourself, where you are most human, sitting at the feet of Jesus. And they were all afraid. They were all afraid. Then those who had seen what happened told the others how the demon-possessed man had been healed. And all the people in the region of the Gerasenes begged Jesus to stay and tell them about the kingdom of God. No. They begged Jesus to go away, to leave them alone, for a great wave of fear had swept over them. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. The king of creation, the one who commands the wind and the waves, who causes evil to flee at his presence, has landed on the shores of the Gerasenes. to bring good news to the poor and release to the captive, to bring sight to the blind and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And they kindly ask him to get back in his boat and go back to where he comes from. This is the story of the gospel. He came to that which was his own, but we had made peace with our fears, and so we sent him back home. We were too concerned about the value of the pigs to pay attention to the kingdom of the Most High. What fear have you made peace with? The people of Gerasa have made their peace with evil spirits living in their graveyard. They've befriended the fear that keeps this man raging in the tombs. They've shackled him. They've put guards around him. And fine, what else could they do? I mean, what other options were open to them? Let's at least push this guy towards the shore, keep him in the graveyards, and we'll get on with our lives. They've made the best of a bad situation. Hey, I get it. They cannot fathom the solution that lands on their shores that would free them from this oppression. They've made such peace with this situation and this fear that it doesn't cross their minds that there's an alternative. And when the alternative shows up, they're not interested in it because they've made peace with the fear that they live with. We've made peace with some things that don't make for peace. A lot of my thought this week around this passage was inspired by a prayer by Ted Loder from this book that Kara gave me. He says, "Lord, grant me your peace, for I have made peace with what does not give peace, and I am afraid. Drive me deep now to face myself, so I may see what I truly need to fear is my capacity to deceive and my willingness to be deceived. Lord, grant me your peace. Instill in me such fear of you as will begin to make me wise and courageous." We've made peace with some things that don't make for peace, but it is easier to live with the terror we know than to confront the peace that passes our understanding. We've made some peace in our relationship with our friends that we shouldn't have made peace with. You've made peace with some habits online that you should not be at peace with. We've made peace with how much money we spend on certain things that don't make for peace. We've made peace with some racism, some sexism in our hearts and minds that dehumanize others, and we should not be at peace with it. You've made some peace with habits in your marriage that maybe you shouldn't be at peace with. We've gotten away from calling that friend, talking to your spouse. We've made peace with things that don't make for peace. And we've made peace with anxiety as a way of life. The what ifs that run our day to day. What if there isn't enough? What if I never meet anyone? What if my kid gets sick? What if I'm stuck like this forever? We've made peace with those anxieties. But the moment Jesus' feet hit the shore, the spirits shriek because they cannot share the same space as the Son of the living God. Perfect love casts out all fear, and perfect love arrives on the shores of Gerasene. And Jesus will not cohabitate with fears that are keeping you from being who you are called to be. Jesus will not cohabitate with fears that are keeping you from being who you are called to be. And this, I think, is part of what it looks like to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. This is God at work in us, pulling back the curtain and saying, you are afraid of this, and I am asking you to trust me more. We'll come up and have a time of prayer in a moment. I want to just close with this quote from Martin Laird about fear. He says that we tell ourselves a story about fear, and then we act it out. We tell ourselves a story that there won't be enough, that I'll be like this forever, that I can't be happy without. We tell ourselves that story, and then acting out this story increases the momentum of fear. It strengthens fear's grip. But what Jesus offers us is stillness. And he says this is not the stillness of a rabbit hiding from a fox. It is the stillness of a mountain residing over a valley. This is the peace that Jesus offers us. Not the temporary peace of a rabbit hiding from a fox, but the kind of stillness and peace that a mountain has residing over a valley. Let's hear those questions that Jesus asks. Where is your faith? And what is your name? The disciples ask, who is this? And the man, freed from the demons, asks, what business do you have with me? Jesus knows you better than you know yourself, and he loves you more completely than you can even love yourself. And he invites you to trust him because he has the power to calm the waves and to set you free from every fear that you've made peace with.